Did they break React with version 18? Some think so because the new strict mode is enabled by default with Create React App, and it includes a fundamental change in how the useEffect hook works. Hello and welcome. I'm Dave. Today we will look at how the useEffect hook has changed in React 18 and how you can fix the breaking changes in your projects. I'll provide links to example source code and all resources in the description below. Let's start today with a quick discussion of software versioning. If you are not familiar, this may help out. So we've got three numbers here in the package JSON beside each dependency. The one on the far right here, the 0 that we see here, this is the patch area, or you can see React Scripts has .1. So there is a patch that has been added to this release of React Scripts 5. So that's a patch. The second number that we see, the second number from the left or from the right, either way, it's the one in the middle, that one is the minor update. And software versions can have minor updates. But when you change the number on the far left, that's a major update, often referred to as a breaking change because it's not going to be compatible with the previous API. So in that regard, I could answer the question, did they break React? Well, yes, right on schedule, because that's what they intended to do with a major release. But more often than not, students would ask, why did they do that? Which literally means why did they make the change? So we're going to look at this useEffect change today and how it changes your code. So I'll go ahead and open up a terminal window here and start the React app so we can look at what's going on. I've cleaned out everything that normally comes with it, so we'll just have a blank page after we get started. And I'll drag that over so we can look at it. Here I'm going to drag this to the left first, close out the terminal. And it looks like maybe I need to drag the one that opened over to my window here. Okay, so now that we've got this, I'm going to open up the dev tools so we can see what's going on. And we've got effectRan twice. Now I'm going to clear this out, but we'll look at why this is happening. And I could reduce the font just a little bit here. I wanted it to be nice and large to look at that software versioning. It's still very good size. So what we've got here is just importing useEffect. And then the app component, this functional component, is running useEffect here, and it's logging effectRan. And I'm just returning an empty paragraph as far as the JSX. Notice it's got an empty dependency array. Because in React, ever since useEffect was introduced, if we provided an empty dependency array, we only expected useEffect to run once when the component mounts. And that's it. That's all you want. However, if we reload this app right now, we get effectRan twice. Now that's a big change really when you're only expecting it to run once. Depending on what the side effects are, what code you're running inside of your useEffect, that could break your app. But let's just break down what happens here. So the component mounts. So instead of saying effectRan, we could say component mounted, and useEffect runs. But then instantly it unmounts again and remounts. And so that's where we get the second one. So useEffect also has a cleanup function, and you can return that at the end. So let's just do this, and I'll just say console log, and we'll say unmounted, or we could say cleanup, whatever we want to do there. But when I save, we should see a change after, there it is, effectRan one more time there. But let's go ahead and clean this out and refresh and see what we get. Now we have effectRan, unmounted, and then effectRan. So you see the order that's happening. Now it doesn't unmount the second time. The second time it remains mounted. But again, this can break your code depending on what you have in here. So today I'm going to show you a workaround, but I also want to highlight the fact that I did a previous video on React 18, and in that video I discussed why you may want to work with this because it can help you find problems in your code. So it's not all bad. So I do suggest going ahead and trying to make your code work before you apply the workaround that I'm going to show you today. If we look at reactjs.org and their blog post about React version 18, when it came out, there is a section called New Strict Mode Behaviors, and I should highlight that the issue with useEffect rendering twice or running twice actually only happens in strict mode. So that will only happen in development only. And let's discuss why they have the checks. It says, in the future, we'd like to add a feature that allows React to add and remove sections of the user interface while preserving state. So when a user tabs away, for example, from a screen and back, React should be able to immediately show the previous screen. So they've got a valid reason for doing this, no doubt. And of course, it says to help surface these issues, React introduces a new development-only check to strict mode, and this new check will automatically unmount and remount every component. And so that's when we get the issue with useEffect. It is unmounted, remounted, and then what happens is the useEffect that we expected to only run once runs twice. Let's go back to the code. And typically, useEffect is commonly used, I should say, instead of just typically, but commonly used to fetch data. Now, we could use a third party like React Query or RTK Query. We could use a third-party application. However, it's nice to have that built in React. So I'm going to paste in a fetch users function right here, and then we'll just call the fetch users function underneath. Now this is asynchronous code, so we will be awaiting the result. However, this is something you often see in React, and this has been a nice way to do it because it would only run once. But now when I save and refresh, this code is going to run twice, and we should see that here. So it's asynchronous code, so the results for both came after the effect ran a second time. Even though the first time fetch users ran, it was inside of the first effect before it unmounted, so we see the results after. That said, now we're sending two fetch requests, and that's possibly not desirable. So that's why we need a fix if we're still going to request data inside of useEffect. And I will say the new React docs, which I will give a link to the beta docs in the description, they are encouraging you to move away from doing this. Actually, they're encouraging you to use a third party like React Query or RTK Query or the others available. Now that said, I think this is something that I do not like, and that's because it raises the bar, raises that entry level for beginners. And I'm a teacher. I'm often teaching beginners, and I don't want to see that bar raised. It's nice to have this built in, so I would like to continue to show beginners how to use fetch and useEffect all right within React without bringing in a third party. So I'm a little bit in disagreement with that move overall, but at least now I'm going to show you how to work around this. So one thing you can do is bring in another hook, and that is useRef. Now useRef has a current property that persists throughout the lifetime of the component. So even on the mount and unmount, it will retain its value. So we can use that here. So inside the app, right after you start the function, we can say const effectRan, and we'll set this to useRef, and we'll set it false. And now before any of the code that we would run inside of the useEffect, other than this console log that says effectRan, we can put an if statement, a conditional that says if effectRan.current, remember we need the current property with useRef, equals false. Then we'll run that code, and then we'll just end the code block even after the cleanup function. So we'll put that cleanup function right inside there. So I'll clean this out before I refresh it. But what we have here then is all of the code that makes an impact essentially will only run if effectRan.current is false, and that will only be false that one time because inside of the return of the cleanup function, and I'll go ahead and leave that console for unmounted as well, we can set it to true. So we'll say effectRan.current equals true and save there. Now, as soon as I saved, it ran. Notice we only got the one set of results now from our fetch because it only ran once. And so we had unmounted and then effectRan here. But let me go ahead and clean this out and refresh, and we should get everything. So there we go. effectRan, unmounted, then it ran again. And actually, we got the results from the first time that it ran because it's false the first time it goes through. And then, of course, this is asynchronous code, so we got the results after it ran the second time. However, the results came from the first time. Let's call this solution variation 1. So here I'll put in a comment and I'll say variation number 1. And then I'll go ahead and comment this code out after I copy it. So I will Control C to copy and then Shift Alt and the letter A to comment it all out. Now the question being, what if we want to run the second useEffect and have that provide the results? And of course it's the one that doesn't unmount at all anyway. So there could be some reason down the road, I'm not sure what, that you may want to use the second time through instead of the first. Variation number 1 uses the first time useEffect runs to run the code. So variation number 2 will use the second time instead of the first time. So I'll paste this back in, but we do need to make a few changes. We'll once again start out with useRef being false, but then we're going to check to see if the value is true. So it will skip that first time that it's false. And then we need to remove the cleanup function from this conditional altogether. And we want the cleanup function to run after the conditional. And that way we'll be able to set it to true the first time useEffect runs. And then of course continuing to set it to true will not make an impact at all. So let's go ahead and save this now. And I'm going to clear this out again and refresh. And we should see once again effectRan, unmounted effectRan, and then finally we get those results. So this variation number 2 will supply the code that runs the second time useEffect is running instead of the first. So I wanted to put both of those in there for you. I'll just label this one variation number 2 so it's in GitHub in that order and you can see everything we've got. So I think this is a pattern that you're going to see, or a variation of this pattern, frequently as long as they keep strict mode in React the way that it currently is. Remember to keep striving for progress over perfection, and a little progress every day will go a very long way. Please give this video a like if it's helped you. And thank you for watching and subscribing. You're helping my channel grow. Have a great day, and let's write more code together very soon.